Coming up on tonight's show, President Trump accidentally did something awesome, much like when your dog vomits on your neighbor's flowers, but it was the neighbor you don't like, so you're like, yes. Plus, a new executive order could make this nation's law enforcement unfriendly. And by unfriendly, I mean unhinged, racist, and murderous. I'm just kidding. They already were. And I'll talk with real-life U.S. Congresswoman Marie Newman. I don't know what she's doing on this show either. Does she know that corporate America owns Congress? I'll find out that and much more coming at you right now. Welcome to Unredacted Tonight. I'm the most censored comedian in America, Lee Camp. I think we can all agree that at times Donald Trump makes the Luftwaffe seem quaint, perhaps even charming. But I think we should take the time here and there to point out those moments when Trump does something positive. Always accidentally, of course, but still, it's positive. For example, he has fallen ass backwards into revealing and defunding a gigantic, globe-spanning U.S. propaganda network. Crazy! And I'm still not even sure he knows that he did that. Like, has anyone told him? When he shuttered USAID, the journalists they were funding around the world suddenly came crawling out of the woodwork with their creepy little claws and their antenna going like, is that not how you picture them? That's how they eat their young, right? In total, USAID spends over $250 million yearly training and funding a vast, sprawling network of more than 6,200 reporters at nearly 1,000 news outlets or journalism organizations, all under the rubric of promoting independent media. That's right, the largest global propaganda network ever created is called independent media. And it's all funded by the largest oil company with an army, the U.S. government. I was under the impression independent meant something completely different. I've had it wrong my whole life. Man, is there egg on my face. Although that is good because with egg prices where they are, I have like $27 worth right there on my face. But yes, USAID funded 6,200 U.S.-backed journalists at 1,000 outlets in countries like Cuba, Afghanistan, Spain, Belarus, Nicaragua, Britain, and of course, Ukraine. Oksana Romanchuk, the director of Ukraine's Institute for Mass Information, revealed that almost 90% of the country's media are bankrolled by USAID, including many that have no other source of funding. So basically, outlets promoting the proxy war in Ukraine, love it. Glad we're doing that. I love that for you. What about outlets trying to bring down socialist Cuba? We gotcha. Miami-based CubanNet published an editorial asking readers for money. Last year, CubanNet received $500,000 in USAID funding. But they aren't the only ones. The director of Madrid-based Diario de Cuba said, aid to independent journalism from the government of the United States has been suspended, which makes our work more difficult. Before she asked viewers to subscribe. Sounds like they were pumping out some Diario. But did you notice that sentence? Aid to independent journalism from the U.S. government. The hell are you talking about? That's like complaining the Condoms to Virgins program has been suspended and it's making it very difficult for our virgins to keep doing their work. I don't think those virgins were independent, if you know what I mean. How about Russian allies like Belarus? A recent survey of 20 leading Belarusian media outlets found that a staggering 60% of their budgets come from Washington. And I assume all those outlets love the proxy war in Ukraine. Fun fact, all 17 of Belarus's reality shows about men with large beards cooking pancakes, also funded by the U.S. How about Iran? Are there pro-Western outlets funded by the U.S.? In Iran, U.S.-backed media have already had to fire workers. A BBC Persian report noted that more than 30 Iranian groups held a crisis meeting to discuss how to respond to the aid cuts. Yes, U.S.-backed Iranian news media thinks that is the crisis in the Middle East right now. Really? Nothing else going on? Kind of got your attention? No? No? Okay. And then there's also hundreds, if not thousands, of social media journalists who have oddly been impacted by the closing of USAID. Social media users have noticed that many of the most prominent anti-China voices on their respective platforms have gone strangely silent since the shutdown. And if they've gone silent the moment the money spigot shut off, then that might be a sign that they aren't doing it for love of the truth, if you know what I mean. Even the British outlet, the BBC, admitted a percentage of their funding came from USAID. BBC Media Action has been affected by the temporary pause in U.S. government funding, which amounts to about 8% of our income in 2023-24. Aw, BBC, I thought you were pathetic propagandists on your own accord. Just for yourselves, out of love of the game. But now I see you've been pathetic U.S.-backed propagandists. Disappointed. This guy. Alan McLeod pointed out another wonderful aspect of how our corporate media has covered this story when they cover this story, is that they keep calling the outlets receiving U.S. funding independent. Here's from the Financial Times. Independent outlets in the former Soviet Union are poised to be hurt by temporary shutdown at key U.S. agency. And here's from The Guardian. From Ukraine to Afghanistan, independent media organizations across the world are being forced to lay off staff or shut down after losing USAID funding. Again, I cannot stress this enough. I'm not sure you understand what that word means. Independent. As in, not funded and overseen by the United States. Look, I know it's a hard word. It's got all of those letters in there. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say 900 letters, maybe more in that word. But Guardian, just work on a couple of letters every day and you'll understand the word independent in like 4 to 6 weeks, tops. But this giant global propaganda web that Trump accidentally destroyed is not the only thing USAID was doing. Last year, a nearly 100-page document by USAID came to light. The document revealed a vast operation to censor and suppress wide swaths of the internet, including Twitch, Reddit, 4chan, Facebook, Twitter, Discord, and alternative media websites. Oh, lucky for me, I only really post on Diddle and Fitchknocker. That's pretty exclusive to those. But the internal docs show that at these sites, USAID lamented users were able to build communities to create populist expertise and develop opinions and viewpoints that challenge official U.S. government narratives. Good God. As we all know, one of the most dangerous viruses infecting Americans right now is opinions. And viewpoints is a close second. Thank God, USAID had a vast censorship operation to suppress these scallywags perpetuating these opinions. And now the monster Trump has defunded them. What are we going to do? Although USAID claimed in the documents that it wanted to stop disinformation, it seemed particularly concerned with malinformation, a concept it defines as speech that is factually correct but misleading. Oh, so malinformation is true things that you don't like when people say them. Got it. So when someone yells from across the room that I have one butt cheek larger than the other, that's malinformation. And I agree, that person should be exterminated. Then the internal docs go on to detail ways to crush people and outlets who are putting forth the offending true information, such as cutting off their funding sources. The report makes clear that its main concern is not China or Russia, but its domestic population. Domestic population? I know some people like that. USAID suggests directing the public towards mainstream corporate sources of information. That would explain why every time someone watches an episode of this show on YouTube, the next thing recommended to them is a 10-year-old episode of Duck Dynasty. which is pretty good. I have to admit, it's enjoyable. USAID also recommends dealing with dastardly content like yours truly by psychologically inoculating Americans against inconvenient facts that challenge U.S. power by pre-bunking information before people see it. Pre-bunking includes discrediting the brand, the credibility, and reputation of the targets. Wait, that's what pre-bunking is? I thought it was when your scoutmaster brought you in to check out the bunk beds before everyone else got there, and then he became way too handsy. Huh, I guess I had that wrong all this time. But this means I was pre-bunked! Not the scoutmaster thing, the other one. In 2017, the New York Times and NPR did lie-filled attack pieces on me in order to discredit my brand, credibility, and reputation. They were pre-bunking me! Afterwards, I felt lied to, used, and violated. So it's kind of the same as the Scoutmaster thing. But I'm not comparing journalists at the New York Times and NPR to sexual predators. That would be an insult to sexual predators. Of course, it's not just USAID that has taken over social media sites. In fact, as Newsweek revealed, the largest undercover force the world has ever known is the one created by the Pentagon over the past decade. Some 60,000 people now belong to this secret army. The force, more than 10 times the size of the clandestine elements of the CIA, carries out domestic and foreign assignments. 60,000 undercover assholes? Good God! Doing what? The newest and fastest growing group is the clandestine army that never leaves their keyboards. These are the cutting-edge cyber fighters and intelligence collectors who assume false personas online. Ever thought someone in the chat of a show like this one seems like they're just there to cause havoc and create infighting amongst people who would normally agree about how desperately this nation needs to change? Well, it's not a stretch to say those trolls might be this secret Pentagon force of 60,000 people. That's more people than the entire military of a lot of countries. That's more than the number of people who enjoyed Apple TV's The Morning Show. Notice I didn't say watch. I said enjoyed. Anyway, I just wanted to thank President Trump for doing something he totally doesn't know he did. I don't think anyone's told him. He uprooted and defunded the largest propaganda network in the world. And hopefully this story helps remind everyone how skeptical we all have to be about pro-US empire news media. And now it's time for What Stage of Capitalism Is This? Trump recently unveiled a shocking executive action. Let me make sure I'm reading this right, because he literally wrote the entire title in all caps. Trump signed the Strengthening and Unleashing America's Law Enforcement to Pursue Criminals and Protect Innocent Citizens. Reading that title feels like I'm trying to tell my grandma something. Grandma! Grandma! You can't make a phone call from a loaf of bread! Grandma! Really, Trump? All caps? You know your crazy uncle who sends emails to the extended family about how the ancient aliens built the pyramids and every third word is in all caps, as if he's having a seizure while he's typing? That guy is now president. Anyway, this executive action, as you might have surmised, is about unleashing the nation's police officers because, as we all know, they have been heavily leashed. Sometimes they can't even leave their homes in the morning. Too leashed. Every time they're about to arrest someone, they just don't do it. Except for the 10 million times they do it every year, which means an arrest is made every 3 seconds in the land of the free. But think about those other 2 out of every 3 seconds cops could be arresting people, but they aren't. And I have a dream, just like Mr. Trump, that one day police will be arresting us every second of every day. Sure, we're the largest prison state in the world with more people locked up here than anywhere, but why stop there? Why not have the largest prison state in the solar system, finally beating out Oberon, one of the moons of Uranus? They've had the crown for too long. There's no can't in the word team, or something like that. And I'm sure all the current arrests once every 3 seconds are for horribly violent stuff, terrible people who need to be behind bars. Oh, we have the stats? Great. Throw them up on the screen, Gary. Fewer than 5% of arrests are for serious violent crimes. Oh, so the vast majority of police arrests are for tiny, meaningless crimes. But that's probably because cops are afraid to arrest the real bad guys, right? Because our police officers feel so leashed. Like, what if they hit a car trying to catch a guy, and then these poor police officers have to pay for the car they hit on their salary? It's disastrous. Luckily, Trump's new action provides legal resources and indemnifies law enforcement officers who unjustly incur expenses and liabilities in the line of duty. And that's a huge deal because they're already indemnified by taxpayers in more than 99.9% of such cases. Thank you, Trump. That 0.1% of police officers are going to finally feel comfortable doing their job. In fact, last year, I think that 0.1% was Officer Stanley James in Flagstaff, Arizona, who had to pay the department back for the 29 pens he had stolen. But they were some nice pens with they had little police cars on them. So, and Stan doesn't have that kind of cash just sitting around right now because his dog needed a surgery recently, okay? It was a nose job. Don't judge. Bailey needed it to feel more like himself, okay? Anyway, Trump is not only protecting this country's poor police officers' wallets. His new executive action also strengthens and expands legal protections for law enforcement officers. Finally, we won't have hundreds of cops locked away for murdering people every year. Or rather, how many are locked away for, whacking loads of Americans every year? Well, let's see. Last year was the deadliest year in U.S. history for police unaliving people. Police killed more than 1,300 people in the U.S. last year. But much like the number of people your wife or husband told you they slept with before they met you, that's not the real number. The Lancet Medical Journal found that the government undercounts police killings by more than half. So we'll be conservative. We'll say the police claim to kill about 1,200 Americans a year, which means they actually kill 2,400. So how many of those 2,400 police officers who did those 2,400 killings go to prison for murder? Well, a study in 2021 found just 7 officers have been convicted of murder in police shootings since 2005. That's 7 officers over 16 years. Since we found that on average, the police kill 2,400 a year, that means over 16 years, they killed 38,400 people. Well done, officers. That's more than the number of people who watched Apple TV's The Morning Show. You have deleted a ton of Americans. Some might call that anti-American, but not us. Sounds great to me. Love it. Okay, so divide 7 by 38,400, and we find that the police, when they murder an American, actually find themselves in prison 0.018% of the time. Oh, sorry, I forgot to round off the answer. This means they find themselves in prison 0% of the time. There is essentially 0% chance a cop in America won't get away with killing someone. Can you hear me, Grandma? You cannot call someone from all over bread. But thank goodness Donald Trump is gonna unleash them. They no longer have to fear being one of the 0 who get locked up for just doing their job. Apparently their job is killing Americans. And perhaps it's worth pointing out that Trump is trying to make it impossible to sue law enforcement. So who is it who's suing law enforcement? Last year, Donald Trump himself sued the FBI for $100 million over the search of his Mar-a-Lago home. With any luck, Donald Trump's new executive action will succeed at stopping Donald Trump from behaving like Donald Trump. Hey, you may not think that the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago hurt Trump that much, at least not $100 million worth, but You don't know the half of it. Among the abuses Trump claims to have suffered, FBI agents didn't remove their shoes before entering his bedroom. Yeah, pretty bad. Pretty bad. He had to burn that room after that. FBI shoes are disgusting from being up the asses of so many innocent people. So thank you, President Trump, for finally letting U.S. law enforcement off the leash. You know, one of the most important questions whenever you're dealing with politics is Congress owned by corporate America? Well, I figured, let's ask a congressperson. Former Congresswoman Marie Newman, thank you for being here.
Well, I'm so pleased to be here.
So I wanted to talk to a congressperson in order to find out if you matter. A widely cited Princeton study a few years back, you probably read it, found that statistically, Americans have literally zero impact on what goes through Congress. Like, literally nothing goes through Congress that doesn't align with corporate America already. And that's only gotten worse since the study came out in 2014. Basically, the federal government has been captured by corporate America. You've been in Congress. You were in the belly of the beast. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I do have an answer to that.
Okay.
We need all new people. And I'm not being exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic. I've done probably 15 speaking engagements over the last 6 weeks, telling everybody, run. We need new blood. And I'm going to say something very mean. We need to get rid of all the olds. All the olds need to go night-night.
Hey, I'm down with that. I've heard it called a gerontocracy recently.
Look, I was there. I can't tell you how many meetings per week, Lee, where someone would take a little night-night nap during a very critical meeting.
Well, considering what they do when they're awake, I think I'd prefer they stay asleep. To change subjects, you were one of the few voices in Congress to support Palestinians and Palestinian efforts for freedom and equality. Do you feel that support cost you your seat? I know one of the pro-Israel PACs spent like $500,000 to get you out.
Democratic Majority for Israel spent about $1.5 million on me.
$1.5 million. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
I got short.
And honestly, it doesn't matter now. But it was significant. And would I have loved if they had spent that money on people that were either starving or needed cancer help? That would have been a much better use of money. That's it. That aside, again, I hate PACs. But yes, it was probably one of the biggest contributors to why I was pushed out, because the establishment refuses to believe that Israel and Palestine have deserve to have peace and prosperity and live with freedom. And they are refusing to believe in our values and our morals of this country, that, you know, we believe in freedom and prosperity for all, and security and peace and kindness, right? And the establishment in the Democratic Party does not believe that. I got called an anti-Semite, and Lee, my husband is a Jew, full disclosure, and my kids are half Jewish, right? You know, so it was always infuriating to me that, like, no, and I do think people are finally catching on to, hey, whenever they throw the anti-Semite thing out, that's super desperate, even like mildly, intelligent.
Not just desperate, but I think, as a Jew myself, it completely dilutes what the word anti-Semitism even means. So it becomes meaningless, and therefore allows actual real anti-Semitism to happen more easily.
Right. It is a really, and it's very, it makes less of the issue, to your point, but it also is so deeply, for the 60% of Jewish Americans that believe that Palestine should be free, it's pretty dumb.
Yeah, pretty dumb is a nice way to say super offensive and ridiculous. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Marie Newman. Really appreciate it.
A delight to talk to you.
That's just a bit of my 15-minute interview with former Congresswoman Marie Newman. To catch the full interview, become a member at leecamp.net or patreon.com/leecamp. And now, here are your headlines from the future. Coming up in 1 week, we'll read, President Trump asks other countries to self-extort rather than waiting for him to do it. That's so generous of him. And coming up June 10th, we'll learn, in a bold move of solidarity with Palestinians, Senate votes to scratch Made in USA off all bombs sent to Israel. Don't say the U.S. government hasn't done nothing for you. And in just 5 days, we'll hear women at grocery stores now selling their eggs to afford eggs. That's a fair trade. And finally, in 6 weeks, we'll read President Trump announces plans to reopen original Titanic, use it to house special needs children. What a man. That's the show. I hope you'll support us by telling your friends to check us out every Thursday, but also I hope you'll watch my full 15-minute interview with former Congresswoman Marie Newman by becoming a supporting member at leecamp.net or patreon.com/leecamp. Plus, you'll get both my ebooks and my Zoom comedy specials when you sign up. Until next time, remember, the revolution will have laughter. Keep fighting.